Hello everybody, welcome back to my book blog. Today we are discussing an extremely popular book. We're discussing Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. Now, Homegoing was shortlisted for just about every book award last year, and I know it has been extremely popular. It is a story of two sisters, Efia and Essie, two sisters in the 19th century, 18th century Gold Coast of Africa, who have very different fates. One marries a slave trader, the other one is kidnapped and sold into slavery. And it follows how the consequences of those two events, those two completely different life events, unfolds on the rest of the generations of the two sisters' family. Now, I read quite a few epics last year. Epics were very popular in the book awards, and I know that I've read books like The Sport of Kings, etc., and the other books that were really popular on epics, and I just didn't get around to reading this one. And it is an epic book. It follows 7 generations of this family across 3 continents, from the 18th century to the 20th century. However, it is not heavy at all. It doesn't feel like it, because though this book, through its great epic sweep, really, and that involves everything from the Gold Coast of Africa up through the cotton plantations in Mississippi, from village missionary schools on the west coast of Africa through to dive bars in Harlem. You get this real sweep of how America was born on the backs of slaves, on the backs of black people, from coal mines and the separations of family and Jim Crow and all of that, and it's incredibly passionate and brilliant. However, this book is written so cleverly that it does not feel huge. It doesn't feel weighed down. It is a very intimate portrayal, and the way Yaa Gyasi has executed this book really sets it apart for me, and I'm so glad I read it, because even though it is epic, it doesn't have that great weight of epicness, and I'll explain why. Normally in epics, when you have generations of the same families, there is this very involved follow through on all the life events as children grow up, become adults, repeat the failings of their parents usually, and become grandparents, and then sourced in regret, and the next generation come through and rebel, and it has all that. The way Yaa Gyasi has constructed her book, though, is very different. Each of the chapters is actually a short story, a short glimpse into a particular event or a particular section in the lives of each of the next generations. So for one chapter, which could be 10 or 12 pages, you follow a particular event, whether it's someone getting sick, whether it's someone losing their job, or whether it's someone struggling with childbirth, or whatever it is. But then in the next chapter, that generation has stopped, and we move on to another life event in the next generation as we follow the generations of these two sisters out through all the consequences of their events. And actually, therefore, what we have are these really interesting, intimate snippets into the lives of these people, and we begin to get glimpses, like real sort of shards and slices, about how the previous generations and the injustices carry forward, and how each generation fights its own fight, whether they're even aware of what happened in their previous generations. And often we have that dramatic irony where we know more about what happened in their previous generations' lives, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, than they do, particularly, of course, for Black Americans, where often their family history is lost through slavery and there are no records of who their past ancestors were, or indeed very hard for people to know where they came from, so to speak. And so Yaa Gyasi is also looking at what home means, because for a lot of the later generations in this book, they don't have that knowledge of what happened in their past because of the lost years, and how what happened to their ancestors was never recorded, and the family line was never evidenced. And so what is home? And it's really interesting watching the successive generations make a home for themselves in America, often in hostile landscapes, but that still makes it home, and how they find community and identity in that. Homegoing is brilliant. It is so easy to read, like I said, because it has this sort of short story feel. There is a family org chart at the beginning. Yaa Gyasi has provided that, so if you're sort of wandering through the book thinking, oh wait, who's that person related to, which side of the family does that come, Yaa Gyasi does have a family org chart, and that does actually help, because the chapters do switch between the two lines, between the two sisters. This is very moving. There are some very horrible truths in this, and Yaa Gyasi rightly doesn't shy away from some particularly horrific scenes, but that is the truth in this book, and it is brilliant. It is at times beautiful, at times terrible, but it is together as a whole a fantastic examination of the Black lived experience and the concept of home and identity and obligation to ancestors and to those that have gone before us. This is really a beautiful book. Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi.